Welcome into 85 at 40. I am Bill Zimmerman. With me is Jeff Berkus, and we are excited to talk to this man because he is a Pro Football Hall of Famer. He was the rock, the cornerstone of that 1985 Chicago Bears offensive line. He is Jimbo Covert, and he joins us now. Jimbo, Bill Zimmerman, how are you?
Good morning, Bill. How are you doing? Jeff, how are you?
Doing great.
We're doing very well. We're excited to have you on. And there's plenty to talk about here. So when we get this started, let me ask you about the reunion that the 85 team had and getting honored before week one there. That had to have been really special, not just to get the nod from the crowd and getting the cheers and everything, but I have to figure at this point, 40 years later, you guys don't get an opportunity to get together too often anymore.
No, that's right. We don't. I haven't seen a lot of the guys in quite some time. So it was a great opportunity to see them and spend some time together. Gary Fensick and his wife Sandy were kind enough to host a party at their house for all the guys that wanted to come in early. So we had a chance to do that. So I had a chance to see a lot of the guys there as well. And then the whole weekend was great. I think the Bears did a wonderful job. You know, Matt Simeone and his team and the alumni relations group over there at Chicago Bears did a great time, a great thing. So it was a lot of fun.
Jim, I just kind of want to follow up with that because, you know, part of an O-line, anybody that has played O-line, you know, it's kind of a team within a team. You kind of talk about your bond specifically to your fellow offensive linemen back in the 80s and then how that's followed forward today.
Sure. I mean, I think that's one group, as you just mentioned, you know, there's a bond there. And I just think it's just because of the work ethic and, you know, kind of the preparation of what you have to do during the week and just kind of the life of an offensive lineman. You know, I mean, we always talked about that, or even Dick Stanfield used to say, you know, when we win this game, it's, you know, they're going to say the quarterback played well. They're going to say the Payton played great. The receivers played well. But if we lose this game, it's going to be all your fault. So, so when you have that kind of mentality, you know, the only people you can count on is the guy playing next to you, you know, and we had a special bond, and I think that showed. You know, I mean, being together for 7 years, you're just not going to see very often in the NFL now, just because of free agency and all those other things. And I just think it takes a long time for an offensive line to work effectively together, just because of what I mentioned earlier. So we were quite lucky. And I think the Bears showed throughout the 80s that, you know, we were pretty good. I mean, if you think about it, you know, everybody talks about how great the defense was, and really they were probably the greatest defense I've ever seen. Standing on the sidelines and watching it like a spectator, like the people in the stands, it was pretty impressive to see. But, you know, that year, you know, we led the league in rushing, led the league in time possession. You know, we were second in the league in scoring, led the league in first downs. It makes your defense pretty good. You know, people don't really talk about that when they talk about the Bears. So, you know, I always remind people of that when they always talk about the old days.
Yeah, and since you brought it up, let me actually go there next, because I think that is a key part of this 85 Bears, because, you know, with the defense, you know, back in that era compared to where it is now, they didn't come, you know, Dennis Allen these days, he likes to come in waves with his defensive line and not having guys play more than 50-60% of the snaps. But, you know, I mean, Mike Hartenstein, you know, they had a couple guys rotating in, but for the most part, that front four, those guys were out there for 90, I don't have the stats in front of me, 90% of the snaps, it felt
Sure.
like they were
Sure.
out there all the time. So you had to make sure that defense was rested so they could come with those blitzes and that all-out assault that they had on offensive lines and quarterbacks. And you had Walter Payton, obviously, but you guys really, it was a ball control offense. I mean, Jim McMahon could complete the passes, convert the third downs when he needed to. But that to me was kind of the engine of this entire 85 Bears, was being able to run the ball so effectively, top running team in the league. And that offensive line was the key to all of it.
Sure. I mean, people do forget. I mean, if you think about it, I think we came from behind in the first 3 or 4 out of the 5 games that we played. I mean, first game of the year against Tampa Bay, I think we were down 14 or 21 at halftime, something like that. I think it was 14, maybe 17 at halftime. So we came from behind. I mean, that defense wasn't really they were kind of unsure of a couple things, and then obviously they turned it on and just came to dominate people. But that's what our job was to do. Our job was to take time off the clock. Our job was to have long drives to keep the other offense off the field, keep our defense off the field, and it was a time of possession game. So and we tried to score as many points as we possibly could anytime we were in the red zone, and I think we did a pretty good job of that. So, that's a complementary thing. I mean, if you have a great defense, right, and you have a great running game, those two things really combine to have a winning team, because it just opens up so many other things.
Yeah, it's really the untold part of this story. But one part I want to follow with one more offensive line question is that you guys have the greatest offensive line poster of all time with the Black and Blues brothers. And I want to know, what was the moment like to take that photo, like kind of the backstory of what you guys were thinking when that was happening? Like, we're going to do an O-line poster. And then what's your relationship with that poster been throughout the years?
Oh, God. Well, first of all, just to get anybody to recognize us, and they're like, hey, we want to take a picture of the offensive line. We want to kind of do this concept where it's the Black and Blues brothers. You're going to put you guys in hats like the movie and sunglasses, and we're going to pay you for it. And we're like, hey, we don't get asked to do anything like that, and we don't get asked to get paid for anything. Actually, people offering us money to do something, I mean, it was always on the other side of the ball, and or Walter and Jim. So, we jumped at it. It was just a lot of fun. And then over the years, I mean, I can't tell you how many of those posters I've signed. I mean, over the years. I mean, but I'll tell you what's really a collector's item is to try to find one with everybody that has a signature on it, all the members. I mean, they're few and far between. I get them sometime where a guy was like, I've been chasing this down for like 7-8 years to try to get your signature on this because you're the last one. Or they'll say Bortzy, or they'll say, Keith, and they can't find him. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun. I mean, and, I think we only got paid for what we were supposed to do, like so many of them, but people have reproduced thousands upon thousands of them. So, we didn't get paid for any of that. So, we could have.
So let me ask you about the offensive line as a unit, because I thought this unit was one of the best units in the league. And, it's hard to compare eras, but I think this is really an all-time great offensive line. Right now, you're the only one in the Hall of Fame. I think all of us believe Jay Hilgenberg should be in the Hall of Fame. Hopefully he'll get his call eventually. But Bortz and Thayer and Van Horn, that was, like you said, you were together a lot of years, which is huge for an offensive line. To me, this unit is underrated, not just for what they were for the key being in 1985, but how good this team was. You hear about the Hogs in Washington. You hear about that Dallas Cowboys offensive line in the early 90s. You don't really hear people talk about the Bears offensive line in the 1980s. Do you feel your unit is underrated when you look at the history of the sport?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the reason we were underrated was because we had such a great defense, right? And they got all the notoriety, and I get that. But if you just look at our stats, just say the stats. I mean, we led the league in rushing 4 years in a row. I mean, nobody has ever done that before, right? The only team that's ever done that before was like the 1938 to 42 Bears or something like that, when it was a running league, right? And so we led the league in rushing 4 years in a row. No one's ever done that before. We just didn't get the notoriety. I mean, if you think about it, in 1983, we led the league in rushing. We had nobody make the Pro Bowl, right? In 1984, we led the league in rushing, right? We had nobody make the Pro Bowl. I mean, just think about that. Think about that. I mean, when you think about, there's teams that have guys out there that are 20th in rushing and guys making Pro Bowls. I mean, it's just because we were overshadowed by the defense. And I mean, the stats that we had, people just never really looked at. I mean, if you go back and look at it, I was looking at something the other day that, last year, Caleb Williams was sacked a record. I don't know, was it 40 sometimes? I think he was sacked last year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, something like that. In 1986, right? Jim got hurt. So we had McMahon, Fuller, Tomczak, and Flutie, right? So we had 4 different quarterbacks in 1986. right? And in 16 games, we gave up like 26 sacks. I mean, just think about that, right? And the Hogs in a lot of those times and gave up more sacks than we did, right? But yet, they say the Hogs are one of the greatest offensive lines of all time. Sure, they were great, right? And they got all the notoriety because of that. But we just kind of got overlooked, and I think that's unfortunate because we had some great players on that line. And you just mentioned Hilge, Keith, Tom Thayer, Mark Bortz. I mean, there were some damn good players on that line, and for us not to get that is, I think, that recognition is, unfortunate.
Well, Bill mentioned Hall of Fame. I see you've got a Hall of Fame hat on right now. And I wonder, it's been a few years since that induction for you. I'm sure that the period of waiting was probably long and anxious and going through a lot of emotions. But I'm wondering, now that you've been through the induction, you've had a few years to think about it, and now it's like part of your identity. What does that legacy piece mean to you now that you're in the Hall of Fame?
It's difficult to kind of describe sometimes, because when you go there, and I think maybe I feel a little bit different than some of the other guys. I mean, I just see some of the guys that are like the greatest players of all time, right? I mean, I go there, and I grew up such a Steeler fan, and I get to sit down and talk to Mel Blount, and I get to sit there and have a cigar with Lynn Swann, and John Stallworth. I mean, and Donnie Shell, these guys were like my heroes growing up, and I get to go talk to them and sit with them. And now they're on the same team as me. I mean, it's hard for me sometimes to even, fathom that I'm part of that group. So I take that, I take that honor very, very seriously, that that I'm recognized as part of that group. And sometimes I'm sure they feel the same way, that you're sitting there and saying, they probably thought that way about guys that played that they looked up to too, right? I mean, what am I doing here? I think it's a reflection on our team, on my teammates, guys that, I played with, what we were able to accomplish. And, and also I think, I came in as a rookie. I started every game. I thought from, probably halfway through my rookie year, and through 1987, I played as well as, any tackle or better than any tackle in the league. I was kind of put in a position where I had to block guys by myself. A lot of times that didn't happen in other schemes. And you had a tight end, you had a back that would chip, you had other things. So when you look back on that, sometimes you're like, well, you played well enough to get there, but circumstances, because I didn't play long enough, prevented me from getting in earlier. All those things go away when you get in. I mean, all those kind of feelings of being slighted, or maybe feelings of being ignored, they go away. So, I'm so grateful for the honor, and it's just very much appreciated.
Well, since we're talking Hall of Fame, let's talk about another Hall of Fame player, the Hall of Fame player on that 85 Bears team, and that is Walter Payton, and what it was like blocking for him, because, obviously Walter was a great north and south runner, and he could lower his head and get that extra yard when that defender was trying to tackle him, whatever he needed to do. But he also would improvise all the time. Like if things weren't working to the left, he'd go all the way back to the right. He'd make a lot of moves in the backfield. What is it like trying to block for someone as great as he is, but you're blocking, because you're expecting the play to be left tackle going right behind you, and then all of a sudden you got Walter's cutting back the other way, and you've got to shift and keep your guy away from him. What is it like trying to block for a running back that is that talented but will improvise like he did?
Well, that's a good question. I think he improvised a lot more earlier on in his career because maybe he didn't have the support system. I think
Fair.
with us, he was really more of a point of attack runner. He was running in the holes that were designed. Of course, when things, there's penetration and things happen where you have to change direction. And not saying he never did that. I mean, he was a master at setting up his blocks, at waiting for the right time to run, especially on screens and other things, and especially on sweeps. I mean, this guy was, he was just a one of a kind person too. I mean, he treated a guy off the street and a first round draft pick the same way. I mean, he was able to speak to you like you felt you were the most important person in the world. I mean, that's a gift. And a lot of people can't do that. And he was able to do that. Did he have an ego? Hell, he had a big ego, but he was able to control that. And he was able to relate to people. Like, it's hard for superstars to do that sometimes, but he was able to do it. So nothing ever surprised me about him. Nothing. And I think everyone talks about this guy being tough and this guy being tough and this guy's a tough guy and this guy played with pain. This guy, the toughest guy on the 85 Bears by far was Walter Payton. I mean, that guy was probably one of the toughest guy I ever played with. I mean, played with pain, played with all kinds of injuries, didn't miss games. He's a pretty special person.
I want to ask you about another Hall of Famer that you have a great relationship with, and that interacts in this 85 season, and that's Dan Marino. So your college teammate, your college friend, the only blemish on the 85 season in the regular season. There's a famous picture of you talking to him after the game. I'm just curious, like, what was that conversation like with Dan during the year? They were in the playoffs. They obviously didn't make the Super Bowl. They delivered that one loss to you. What was that relationship like during then? And, how often does it come up when you guys talk now?
Well, it comes up every once in a while. When he would see my Super Bowl ring, it says on the side of it 18-1, and he would say, that one is mine, and I'd say, hey, what would you rather have, bro, the one or the ring? He'd say, you're right, I'd rather have the ring. I mean, when you got a special player like him, I mean, Buddy came up to me that week in Atlanta and said, we're going to blitz your pal and we're going to knock him on his ass. And I said, you do that, he's going to kill you. I mean, I played with him for 4 years. I mean, I saw what he would do when people would blitz. I mean, if you go back and look at some of those even pick games, right? I mean, this guy knew where to throw. He understood football. He knew where to throw the football. He knew where one-on-one was. He knew how guys could get open. He was his velocity and how he threw the football. I mean, it was pretty special. So, and when you go back and look at that Sugar Bowl game, when he threw the last second touchdown pass our junior year, I mean, he dropped. Instead of dropping 7 steps, he dropped 10 steps, came all the way back, waited for the tight end to go. He was one-on-one with the safety down the middle. He threw a perfect pass. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. 4th down and 3, we lose the game if we don't convert, right? And so he throws a touchdown pass. And that's the kind of player he was. So, Buddy came up to me and said, we're going to blitz him. I said, you do that, he's going to kill you. And he did. I mean, Buddy refused to play nickel. He thought he could just blitz him all the time, and not with a guy like him. And you got to remember, also, I mean, think about it. You had Duper, Clayton, and Nat Moore who could get open on anybody, right? And we had a bad game plan defensively. I mean, those guys could talk about it any way they want on defense. We had a bad game plan defensively. And then when we got behind, we weren't a team that could throw the ball all the time. Getting from behind. I mean, we couldn't do that. And so we did it the first couple weeks against weaker opponents. We weren't going to do it against the Dolphins, who were very, they could score at any time. So it was a tough game, but I think it's the best thing that ever happened to us because it showed that we could get beat. And, it showed everybody when we regrouped and said, this isn't going to be easy. We're just not going to romp through everybody. And I think it refocused people.
Well, let me ask you about the Dolphins then, since we're on that subject. The AFC Championship game, the Dolphins were there. The Patriots go into the Orange Bowl and beat them. Nobody saw that coming. You guys had already played the Patriots, and I think it was week 2.
Yeah.
And handled them pretty easily. It wasn't nearly what it was in the Super Bowl, but it wasn't, overly competitive either. How much did you guys want to face the Miami Dolphins again and erase that blemish? And is that something, looking back on it, you just sit there and go, it's 18-1, one of the most dominant teams in NFL history? Or do you sit there and sometimes you just wish you had another crack at them?
No, it didn't really matter. I mean, at the end of the day, and the reason I say that at the end of the day, even if we would have played the Dolphins in the Super Bowl and beat them, you still would have been 18-1. Right? You weren't going to be undefeated. That wouldn't have meant that you were undefeated, right? And I don't think that would have changed our legacy at all, really, either. You could say, hey, they beat you. You weren't undefeated. You beat them in the Super Bowl. I mean, would I rather play the Dolphins in the Super Bowl? Absolutely. And I thought that would have been a hell of a game. I think the score would have been similar to what we beat the Patriots by. I think our team was on a roll, and we would have had a way different game plan offensively as well. We would have kept our defense off the field. We wouldn't be trying to score. We would be trying to have long drives, and I think our defense would have been able to tee off, and it would have been a little bit different. And we would have played nickel. I guarantee you. I think they would have maybe had to tie Buddy up in the locker room and say, okay, we're going to play nickel. And, I mean, when I was at Pitt, every team we played nickel. I bet you we played Penn State one time. I think they had 7 deep. So, you know what I'm saying? It's just you can't play a player like that conventionally thinking that your pass rush is always going to get there. It's not going to work.
Well, you've talked about the mindset of an offensive lineman and grinding, and some of the great rush ends or linebackers that you had to face over the years, and that's part of your legacy and why you were so great was that you had such great success one-on-one against some of these guys like Lawrence Taylor. Who were the guys that really stuck out to you, and how did you prep for the differences in style and the greatness that was across from you, and how did you have so much success against those guys?
Well, I watched a lot of film, and I tried to understand exactly, what their tendencies were. And I just felt like, Lawrence Taylor, I mean, I think he's the greatest defensive player that ever lived, in my opinion. And I think I matched up well with him physically. And that was a big thing. And I think secondly, we were never really horribly in bad down in distances. You know what I mean? So I wasn't in 3rd and 12, 3rd and 14 a lot. Right. And we controlled the ball and we ran the football too. Right. And so that had a big deal too. So, I mean, if you're sitting there and it's 21-0 in the 4th quarter, right. And it's 3rd down and 10, I mean, you got problems. You got problems if you're playing against someone like Lawrence Taylor, but we weren't in those positions. So I think that really helped when I had to block in someone like him. But, I mean, there were so many great players I played against over the years that, I mean, I think the best guy I ever played against was Leroy Selman, who, if you talk to a lot of guys in the 80s, they'll tell you he was one of the best that played. I mean, he played that 5 technique. They played a 34. He was a guy that was going to rush against you every single play. On 3rd down, they brought an extra lineman in. He came out on you, and he was a load. He was a chore. And then you got guys like Bruce Smith, who was just big and talented and could rush a passer. And then they started to have some specialist guys that would come in there at the end of my career that were really fast and good on turf and things like that. So. It's not like it is today. I mean, these speed guys now, these I guess they call them edge rushers now. There's all these new terminology and everything. They're like 240 pounds, 235 pounds. They they're 6'2" and they can run a 4.5 40, and they got in a track stance and they're on turf and they're hard to block. So if you can control the football, I just run at those guys all the time. I'd run at them as much as I possibly could, and I would wear them out. Right. I mean, if you're going to let them tee off on you like that, that's where you see all these sacks that are happening right now. These guys are like linebackers, right? I mean, not even that. They're like safeties, playing edge, and they can run. They can fly, and on turf, they're dangerous as hell. So, you got to change something up. I mean, you just can't. I just see when I see these guys sitting back and blocking these guys, it's frustrating to me sometimes when I see that, because they're going to kill you. They're going to absolutely kill you. You can't match up with that kind of speed, as a 320-pound left tackle going backwards, with a guy going forward in a track stance. You got to be able to take him. You got to be able to have mix things up, right? You got to go after him. You got to go play action. You got to cut him every once in a while. You got to force him to start thinking about he's just not going to have a race to the quarterback.
Yeah, well, you're talking about those great pass rushers that you went up against, and the man you were trying to protect them from was Jim McMahon, who my stance is that he is one of the most underrated players that from the 1980s. I think a lot of people who didn't see him play look back at the statistics. They look very pedestrian because the amount of games that he missed due to injury. But I think, you brought up Dick Stanfill and kind of talking about like you guys basically being like umpires. If the game goes well, you get no credit. If the game goes poorly, you get all the blame. And I think the relationship you guys had with Jim McMahon through all the stories about the dinners he'd take you out to, the gifts, he'd score a touchdown, he'd hand the ball to an offensive lineman to spike the ball, trying to give you guys some of the credit that you deserve there. What was that relationship like with McMahon, and how important is that relationship for a quarterback to have with his offensive line?
Well, I think our relationship was a kind of different kind of a relationship, because I think, Jim always wanted to maybe be an offensive lineman. He liked to roll his sleeves up. He liked to headbutt. And I think he just related to us. And I think it's always, you have to have a good relationship with your offensive line if you're a quarterback. I mean, if you want to stay on your feet, he always did. And we just had so much confidence when he was in the game. I mean, plus people don't give him the credit that he deserves. I mean, he was the smartest guy I ever played with, hands down. And he knew where the ball needed to go, right? He knew defense. A lot of the times, audibles and other things were all his. And he could call just as good a game as anybody if he wanted to. I mean, our 2-minute drill was great because he was calling all the plays. The guy was just exceptional. Was his arm the greatest in the world? No. It was pretty good though. And he knew where to throw the football. So he doesn't get the credit that he deserves because he just couldn't stay healthy. I mean, and people don't realize, it wasn't for lack of anything other than just, think about it. He's like 6'1" maybe. I mean, he's, soaking wet. He's 190 pounds, maybe 185, 90 pounds. I mean, he's not a big guy. He's not Dan Marino. He's not 6'4", 240, And, he threw his body around like a offensive lineman, and he just couldn't stay healthy. And so it wasn't for lack of anything other than just, when you do that, you're eventually going to pay for it. And he did.
Bill?
Oh, I got one more for you, Jim, here before we let you go.
Yeah.
And that is, I wanted to talk to you about practices with that defense, because we know how much things have changed in the NFL over the years, and practice is a lot different, especially in training camp and everything, than what you guys had in the 1980s. And with some of the documentaries and things that have come out over the last 10 years, we've heard a lot about just how brutal those practices were, and how, really, I think violent is the word in terms of how hard you guys were going after each other. It almost became like a game within a practice, it seemed, about, the offense trying to show the defense that you guys were legit, and the defense trying to say, hey, no offense can do anything against us. What were those practices like, and are there any stories that you can share with us?
Well, it's nothing like today. I mean, we had 6 weeks of two-a-days. I used to, Johnny Rowland was a running back coach, and he always had a practice script, and it just tells you what, you're going to do during practice. And I would take it out of his back pocket and see what conditioning was just to know how hard I had to go. Right. I mean, because it was hot, and these guys, they do one a day. Right. Our practices were essentially live. Right. Except the only one you couldn't tackle is McMahon or Payton. Everyone else was open season. And so you had 2.5 hour practices, and then you had to run 16 110s. Right. And so guys are like, and then 16, it was 16 110s, 1080s, 1060s, 1040s. Right. And then 16 110s, 10. So you ran 16 110s one day, next day, 1080s, 1060s, 1040s. And so every day you had some sort of conditioning. When it was a 1020s day, I was like, thank God I could go a little harder today. Right. And so honestly, that's you had to pace yourself, and you couldn't go like that. And so, now they got like RFID tags on these guys, and how much conditioning they can do. So it's completely different. And then just how physical it was. I mean, we started off every practice the first 4 days of camp, every morning practice with Nutcracker, right? Every for 4 days in a row. And I was just seeing who was tougher. So you got me going against Richard Dent, against Dan Hampton, against Steve McMichael, with Jim McMahon handing the ball to Walter Payton. Think about that in a Nutcracker drill. And it's insane. It's insane. They would put people in jail if they did that today, coaches. So it's completely different now. And you were just conditioned to do it. So I just think for us, it was it became difficult, because what would happen is you were like, if you think about games now, you see the defenses, maybe not on some of these scores, but it always seemed like the defenses are so far ahead of the offenses early in the season because they're just not getting enough work, right? The offense, it's timing, blocking, aiming points, timing of passes. But we were sharp, right? Because we were working all camp. So, we'd start off 6-1, 7-1, something like that. And then we'd lose 2 in November and 2 in December, right? Because we were just wore out. So I think now there's got to be a happy medium. You got to get to work in. Maybe it's not live, but it's thud, and maybe not tackling into the ground, but you got to get to work in. And then, you got to be able to go live in practice. You got to be able to. For offense and defensive linemen. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. And that's why you see bad aiming points, right? You see bad pass sets. You see a lot of stuff that could be corrected, I think, if you went live.
All right. Well, we'll end with this, Jim. We got to ask you, 85 Bears. I mean, we understand Lombardi's Packers did it in the 60s for a long time. The Chuck Noll Steelers did it for a long time in the 70s. But single season, is the 85 Bears, I know it's impossible to compare eras, but is the 85 Bears the greatest single season team of all time? Yeah,
I think so. I think we're the greatest. I still say that, we're the greatest team of all time. And you could say, but you're talking about team, right? So that's team for a year. That's not, we weren't able to put together multiple years, but when you think about it, from 84, 85, 86, 87, those 4 years, I think even 88, maybe 5. I think we won more games than any NFL team in history up to that point, right? In our record, if you go back and look at it. The year after the Super Bowl in 86, we were a 50-yard field goal away from being 15-1 2 years in a row. No one's ever done that, right? And that's with playing 4 different quarterbacks. So people don't realize that team, we had the potential. It's just we'd had uncertainty at some positions, and that was difficult for us. But we won one, and I'm grateful that we won one. Would I have liked to win more? Yeah, but that season was pretty special, and you're not going to see things like that ever again.
Yeah, the times have definitely changed. There he is, Jimbo Covert, Pro Football Hall of Fame member, and of course, 1985 champion with the Chicago Bears. Jim, thanks for so much time. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed this, and hopefully we can enjoy this Bears season a little better than how it started.
I hope so too. Yeah, you bet.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of 85 at 40. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon. Adios.